Today I'm here at Miami City Ballet with legendary dancer Edward Villella. Edward Villella was born on October 1st, 1936 in Bayside, New York. He is a legendary American ballet dancer and choreographer known as one of America's most celebrated dancers. Villella enrolled in the School of American Ballet at age 10, but then interrupted his studies to complete his college education. He attended the New York Maritime Academy, where he lettered in baseball and was a champion boxer. Villella became a member of the New York City Ballet in 1957 after finishing school. He rose to the soloist position in 1958 and principal dancer in 1960. Edward Villella was one of the first American male dancers to appear with the Royal Danish Ballet and the only American ever asked to dance an encore at the Bolshoi Theatre in Moscow. He is the founder of Miami City Ballet and serves as the artistic director and chief executive officer. Edward, it's so nice to see you again, and it's my pleasure to have you on South Florida Profile.
My pleasure. Allow that to be my pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's been a while since we've seen each other, and I have so many things that I've always wanted to ask you. I do want to talk to you a little bit about your childhood and, how you grew up, because I know that was really such a big part of who you are. And then we'll talk about Miami City Ballet, after that, of course. But you grew up in Bayside, New York.
I grew up in Bayside, Queens. I was part of a blue-collar family. My father ran a trucking business in the garment center in New York City. I worked on this truck in the summers when I was 11, 12, and 13 years old. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mother, who was an orphan and wanted my sister, her daughter, who was a year older than me, to have all of the opportunities that she never had. And one of them was ballet lessons. And she took my sister off to this local school in Queens. And I used to hang around in the streets, and being a very physical guy, I would get into some physical trouble from now and then. And one day I got knocked unconscious by a baseball while my mother was away with my sister. And when she got home, she was very upset and said, "Okay, you are coming with us." I said, wait a minute, that's not where I want to be. 40 giggling girls, their mothers, and me.
And the tough Italian kid from Bayside.
Well, I had a tough Italian father from Bayside. So anyway, my mother said, "We can't trust you on the streets anymore," and I got dragged to my sister's school, or I had to sit there and fidget. And
how old were you at this time?
I was about 8 or 9 years old at that time, and then all of these waltzing things these young ladies were doing turned into jumps. And I said, well, let me sneak back there. And I went in the back and I started jumping around. I said, I can jump around. And the teacher got upset. I got a dirty look. I thought I was in trouble. Indeed, I was, because she went to my mother and said, you either get him out of here or stick him in tights at the bar. And the next day, I was in tights at the bar. And that was not the thing to do as
I can imagine.
an 8 or 9-year-old boy in Queens to wear tights. I was so humiliated by it all. I used to wear my disguise, which was a baseball uniform. I put my baseball uniform on, my bat, my glove, my cap. And it was a 2-flight walk up to this place. And I walked up backwards, rationalizing that if any of my friends saw me, they may think I'm going out to play baseball, not to point my toes. But the amazing part of it was that after about 6 months, I got suddenly fascinated with this physicality. And what fascinated me was, I was physical, but I was just naturally physical. And this was structured, this was formed. This was a mind-driven physicality that was tied to so many other different things, including music and time and rhythm and all of this. And it was this next physical challenge for me, and I began to fall in love with it. But I didn't say anything, and I just let it go by. And my mother took my sister into the School of American Ballet, the New York City Ballet's school run by George Balanchine. And my sister was accepted after her audition, and my mother lightly said, "Oh, incidentally, I have a son at home who's not that interested, but he also dances." And at that time, he said, "A son, a boy, can he walk?" I could walk. "Bring him in." And so they brought me in, and now I'm amongst these amazing dancers, the Andrei Iglevskys, Igor Yushkevichs, Maria Tolchievs, Nora Kays, Melissa Haydens of the world.
What an incredible time, huh?
And I was stunned by the elegance of these people and the physical commands that they had, and I said, that's what I'm going to be. Except my sister quit, and then my father said, that's it. My mother said, that's it, because my mother's passion was wrapped around her daughter. And I said, hey guys, what about me? I like this stuff and I'm pretty good at it. My father said, no, you are going to college. I said, no, you are going to college. I went to college at 16.
Well, I didn't realize you were that young when you went to college.
Yeah, I made high school in 3 years, specifically to be a dancer earlier. But now that was taken away from me, and at any rate, I spent 4 years at the New York State Maritime College at Fort Schuyler, Throgs Neck, in the Bronx.
Which is a completely opposite world.
Somewhat opposite. And being physical, I won my letters in baseball, and I was welterweight boxing champion, but I was absolutely frustrated and desperate to dance.
Mm-hmm. And it was you got it in your blood, yeah.
You know, this kind of stuff is addictive. I mean, once you start it, you cannot stop it because it is so enriching. It enriches the body, but also the intellect, because again, it's your mind driving all of these things, and style and manner and musicality and theatrics and creating a role. You know, we don't just get out there and fly around and dance. You know, athletes go out there and they do their thing and they're great, but we've got all of these other aspects that we have to be responsible for.
And the spotlight, being a male dancer, an American male dancer, was really on you. I mean, there were wonderful female dancers of that time, but very few male dancers that really had the talent that you had. And I think George Balanchine absolutely saw that in you from the very beginning.
Well, that was my great fortune, that I was a uniqueness. I was a young man who could be an athlete, but who could be a very refined athlete, a ballet dancer. But I had the willingness and interest to do it.
Did the fact that your father and mother not want you to do this make you want to do this more, or do you think it was just something that you just had in your heart?
Well, you know, it's like taking candy from a baby. Here I had this glorious stuff that I loved and enjoyed, and suddenly that was it. It was over. I could no longer aspire to those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So it became almost a desperation. And in my last year in college, I used to sneak off the base and drive into Manhattan and take classes, and got myself in some kind of rusty shape, presented myself to George Balanchine, and I said, do you remember me? Oh, yeah, I remember you. Yeah, I remember you. And I was offered a job at the New York City Ballet.
Which was incredible, really.
And I gave my degree to my dad, and I said, I'm going to be a ballet dancer. And he said, I'm embarrassed. And he did not speak to me for a year. Unfortunately, we didn't have that kind of understanding. I mean, his background was the Garment Center, but also his two closest friends were professional prize fighters. So right. He didn't have the same kind of environment. Sensitivity and understanding of where I was going. But at any rate, I invited both of my parents to our second opening night. Mm-hmm. And my father said, okay, we'll come, but where you will be in the back line, it'll be hard to find you. There were 4 ballets on. I had 3 principal roles. I was flying around doing all of this, and I had said to my parents if they had liked what they saw, I would leave word with the stage doorman and they could come back. And at any rate, the final curtain comes down and Balanchine is standing on stage and telling me what I did right and wrong and speaking a physical language amongst ourselves. Curtain goes up, dark house, stagehand comes, puts the night light. Balanchine and I finish our conversation, we shake hands, he goes off stage right, I start going off stage left, and I hear something and see something, and there are my mother and father in the wings in tears. And the three of us stood in those wings and laughed and hugged and cried. And from that time on, my father became a ballet-main and handed out my reviews and pictures in the Garment Center. So now I had life back. And
that was wonderful. How did that feel? That must have just felt like like a weight was lifted off for you.
It truly was, because all of us underneath want parental approval.
I think if you find your spirit in this life and you go for it, you will ultimately live a happy life, and you certainly have found your spirit. Still, such great spirit.
I'm
such great spirit.
I'm still smiling.
I'm so curious to know how it felt to be in George Balanchine's presence. The first time you met him, can you tell me a little bit about meeting George Balanchine and what that meant to you?
I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I was in this class for young people at the School of American Ballet, and there was a buzz around that there was this young boy who could jump around and fly around, and certainly the buzz got to Balanchine, and suddenly the door opened while I was in class, and his aura preceded him. He was a man of unbelievable dimension, and he just stepped in, he sat down, and he watched for about 20 minutes, and then he laughed. And then the next time I truly met him was when I returned and asked him if he remembered me, and I wanted to audition for a job. And he said, "Yes, I do remember you. I auditioned and I became a member of the New York City Ballet."
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
And to stand in front of the genius of a George Balanchine, and for he to provide me with material that I would then have to make comment on. I mean, I was a graduate of a maritime college with a Bachelor of Science degree in marine transportation. Hadn't danced for 4 years, and now I'm in the most sophisticated company in the world, and I'm standing in front of not only Balanchine, Robbins, Igor Stravinsky, Lincoln Kirstein, who was the founder and the general director of the School of American Ballet, plus the New York City Ballet. It was a world unknown to me because I just cut it off for 4 years. But what a thrill, what an excitement, what a challenge.
And you had so many famous roles. I mean, of course, you're known for that famous leap in Prodigal Son, but what were some of the famous roles that you played, as far as, it could be Balanchine or not, but some of the famous ballets that you performed in? What was your favorite?
Well, it's very hard when you're talking about having genius make masterwork on you. And he made the Ruby section of Full-Length Jewels on me. He made Oberon in A Midsummer Night's Dream. He made me the samurai in Bugaku. I was that Italian Tarantella Villella in Tarantella. I did Swan Lakes, I did Giselles, I did Coppelias, I did all kinds of things. And that was the beauty of it, that not only could I dance within that company and be directed by these geniuses, I was also allowed to dance outside and dance a repertoire that was not included in the New York City Ballet.
Yeah, that was a tremendous freedom, to be able to do that.
It was phenomenal. For instance, I had 1 week where I danced Tchaikovsky Pas de Deux, a Balanchine Pas de Deux. And I danced it with 5 different ballerinas within 6 days.
Incredible.
And these were the greatest dancers. I mean, we're talking about Violette Verdi and Melissa Hayden and Allegra Kent and Kay Mazo. It was a remarkable gift that was in front of me.
And dancing with Patricia McBride, that must have been incredible as well.
Patricia McBride was one of the best and most wonderful people to dance with. We danced together for 20 years and never once had a crossword.
That's incredible.
Well, she's incredible. She's an incredible human being. I adore her.
I want to talk about the school a little bit, but you work with your daughter, who is the assistant ballet mistress, and your wife, of course, Linda, who is the head of the school. I think that's just really such a testament to you. How do you think your mom would feel about that, and your dad as well?
I think my mother would burst with pride, and I think my father would cry. And for this to be having arrived at a place where indeed it's kind of familial, but that's the way I wanted to make this company and to make this school. I come from a very, very different era, and I come from an era of people who have been criticized and chastised all of their lives, and I don't believe that that's the way we teach in a contemporary manner and fashion. I think what you do is you make people willing, you relax them, you relieve tension, you don't create any kind of structural animosity, but a really a give and take. It's my opinion that I seek the respect of everybody I work with on a daily basis. It's not that they are demanded to respect me. I simply want to lead by action.
I do want to talk to you about your honors. You received the Kennedy Center's honor, so many different awards. You were appointed by President Clinton to the National Medal of Arts. Which of the awards that you have received really meant the most to you?
You know, accolades are always welcome, you know, and the more, the better. I think that probably the idea that I would be honored by a president with the highest medal for an artist is one of the highest of those circumstances given to me by President Clinton. But also the Kennedy Center honors, it's kind of almost an American knighthood for artists. And if you think about it, there are 5 of us per year, and this is about 26, 20, whatever years. So I am one of about 150 people in the history of theatrics and performing arts and various and sundry other circumstances. So that is a major distinction for me. The other is that I spent 6 years on the President's National Council on the Arts, appointed by President Johnson, and that suggests that myself and others, we are ambassadors for the arts, for our country. So it's
Which is beautiful. Yes.
It's a lovely thought, you know. It's a lovely memory, and for me, memories support me wonderfully well.
Talking about memories, I remember you being on Lincoln Road. I remember when Miami City Ballet really started. They said South Florida was a cultural wasteland before Edward Villella actually arrived, and I think to some degree that is very true. I mean, you really led the way for many of the arts institutions. You really started the whole foundation for South Florida to be a major arts center, and it has really become that. When did Miami City Ballet actually begin?
We began in 1986, and we began in a storefront on a place called Lincoln Road that was a desert, and it was scary and dangerous, and now it's one of the biggest tourist centers on Miami Beach. But I wanted us to be on a walking mall, and I wanted to leave the windows open, and for 3 reasons. Number 1, I wanted to present a visibility, so people walking by would stop and put their noses on the window and say, what's going on? Secondly, I grew up in New York City, and the New York State Theatre at Lincoln Center, where I grew up as a dancer as well as City Center, have no windows. So you felt kind of subterranean, and it was not comfortable for me to be subterranean. I needed to touch air and light and be part of human circumstance. And the other was 1/3 of my company. At that time, I had 19 dancers. I chose 1/3 of them to be from academies and schools. So these were kids who were unused to being watched. Now they are watched 7.5 hours a day.
Right, perfect.
And we continue that idea here, every studio we have.
Right, the street was your stage, which was wonderful.
Well, if we think that we have to hide it, we will. And that's not what we're about. We are about up, forward, and out, and presentation. We are performers. So why hide it? Why hide the preparation? That for me was old-fashioned. Lots of other things I thought were old-fashioned, and that's why for me the privilege of starting a company from the ground up, nothing was here. I had an empty canvas, and I'm proud of saying every mistake here is mine.
So walking through this building of 6.5 years old, I can see so many changes that have happened, but you are still out there in rehearsal, teaching company class as well.
Every day I teach company class. Every day I am in the studio. I spend up to 7.5 hours a day in the studio, plus I am called CEO, which means I am the responsible adult for not only the company but the administration. I'm also responsible to report to the board and deal with the board and deal with board relations. So I am truly a hands-on kind of guy.
Right, so you have the artistic vision of the company, being the artistic director, as well as the budgeting and the reporting to the board, which is really two different, totally different positions, but obviously manageable because you're doing a wonderful job at that as well. You're working on something new now for an upcoming performance. Tell me about the new work that you were rehearsing, I think, today for a new choreographed piece or something you've recently choreographed.
I was working today on a piece that I choreographed a couple of years ago.
This is Gismonte.
Gismonte, Brazil.
Uh-huh.
Gismonte is a brilliant, brilliant Brazilian choreographer. And I wanted to do a somewhat abstract ballet done to very brilliant music and based on the internal understandings of a great Brazilian composer. And my thought and idea was about Brazil and how huge and expansive that is, and the forests, and also the urban life in Brazil, and tried to combine both of those things. It's a work that I had the great pleasure to collaborate with a great friend of mine, Frank Regan, who also collaborated with me on Neighborhood Ballroom. And it was a delight to do.
And I do believe that, you know, this is a work, a labor of love. Certainly, you know, the exhaustion in the body, just the wear and tear on the body, but the magic of the ballet you have really kept alive here in South Florida. And I would like to know what is next. I know you're aching to tell me something about Twyla Tharp, and I can't wait to hear what's happening, you know, next for the company.
Well, in building a company, you know, you take the first step, and it's a step at a time. And it shouldn't, forgive me, be a leap at a time. It really should be a simple step at a time, because it takes time to do all of this. We have been fortunate to have established a very, very comfortable relationship with the Tharp people, especially the people that she sends to stage her works. My executive director, plus my assistant, my direct assistant, started to talk to me about a guy called Elvis Costello. And Elvis Costello, those of us who know about him, is a brilliant poet, songwriter, composer. And the thought of two geniuses like that, how to get those two together. They've had two wonderful creative meetings, and we are looking forward to a major, major commission by two major, major artists in two separate disciplines. So that for us is this kind of building.
And two totally different personalities as well. I mean,
totally.
Which is really, I mean, I can't imagine what the stage is going to be like. I think that is going to be very exciting.
That's called collaboration, when you can get those minds of brilliance, but different disciplines to...
That's really great work when that happens.
It's another moment in this company's development and involvement to have two major artists agree to make a major commission for you and to have a major foundation to provide us with those monies.
Well, you have certainly raised the bar here as far as what you're performing and where you've taken this company. And South Florida needs to raise the bar in their support to this company, because it truly is a jewel to South Florida. So I want to thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing the new work with Twyla Tharp. Is it named yet, or do we
No.
know? Not yet. Okay.
No.
But we look forward to seeing
that's
that.
down the road.
Okay. Well, great things. I wish you and Linda and your children the best. And so good to see this wonderful Miami City Ballet definitely leaping into the new year. So thank you so much for being with us today on South Florida Profile. Thank you so much. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm Debra, and I look forward to seeing you next time.